This is Miss Rudd, and today we're going to be learning about categorical data. So if you are KVA, take a second to print out the notes off of Canvas, or if you don't have a printer, remember you can follow along in your ISN. Also remember that if I'm moving too fast, you can always pause the video and then push play when you're ready to continue. So categorical data is data that can be divided into categories based on the attributes of the data. Categorical data can also be summarized in three ways. The first way being mode, second being relative frequency, and the third being by a percent bar graph. So mode is the category that occurs the most. So in the table, it shows us the number of students that play each instrument. And our first question asks us to summarize the data from the table using the mode. So when we summarize the data from a table, we're basically just saying what we see. But because it specifies that it wants us to use the mode, we're going to look for the mode of the data and then talk about that. So if you notice, the instrument that has the most students that play it is the drums, because there's 16 students that play the drums. So our summary is going to be the greatest number of students play drums, so drums is the mode. Our second question says to find the percent that represents the mode of the data. So when we do that, we can set up a proportion. Remember that it's part over whole equals percent over 100, and we are finding the percent, so we don't know what's going to go up here, but we know that the percent, is always over 100. And then we're finding the percent that represents the mode, so we need the number that represents the mode. So drums has 16 students playing it, so our part is going to be 16, and our whole is the total number of students. So when you add up all of these numbers, you get 40 students. So if you notice, I can't easily go from 40 to 100 or from 40 to 60. So I'm going to simplify this fraction by 2 to get 8 over 20. Now I can go from 20 to 100 by multiplying by 5, which means whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, and 8 times 5 equals 40. So my answer is 40% of the students play drums. Percent. The next thing we're going to talk about is relative frequency. So relative frequency is the ratio of a number of times a category is represented to the total number of pieces of data. So kind of like what we did for number 2 on mode. So it says the table shows the number of students that speak various languages. Determine the relative frequency for each state and remember to set up proportions to solve. So here I already have it set up, so we just have to fill out the numbers. So the relative frequency is going to be our percent. So we are finding the percent for all of these, and we know that the percent is always over 100. All right. So our part is going to be the number that represents that language, and our whole is going to be the total number of students. So if we add all of these up, our whole is going to be 50. And for Arabic, our part would be 2. German, our part is going to be 15. French, our part's going to be 15. For German, our part is going to be 6, and for Spanish, our part's going to be 27. And when you set all of those up over 50, we know that to get from 50 to 100, we need to multiply by 2. So to get from, for Arabic, 2 to our percent, we're going to multiply by 2. So for Arabic, our percent is going to be 4%, or our relative frequency is 4%. For French, it is 30%. For German, we have 12%. And for Spanish, we have 54%. And remember that percent could also be represented as a decimal, being like 4 hundredths, 30 hundredths or 3 tenths, 12 hundredths, or 54 hundredths. So relative frequency could also be displayed in hundredths instead of in percents. The third thing we're talking about is a percent bar graph. So percent bar graphs show the relative frequency of each category in a single bar. So this graph already gives us the relative frequency of each animal. And number 1 asks us to create a percent bar graph from the relative frequency table. So here we have 0 all the way to 100%, and we're basically going to draw rectangles in different colors that represent the percentage that we see from the table. So I'm going to make cheetah red, then we'll do leopard in green, and lion in blue. So cheetah has to be 30%, and if you notice, it's counting by 20s over here, so we're just going to have to estimate where 30% is going to be. So it's going to be about halfway between 20 and 40. And then leopard, we have 45%. So from 30, we should end around 75. So that's going to be a little past the halfway mark between 60 and 80. And then lion is the last 25%. So from 75 all the way to 100. And anytime you make a percent bar graph, your total should always be 100. So if for some reason you ever draw a percent bar graph and you don't quite get to 100, recheck your numbers because your total relative frequency should equal 1 whole, which would be 100%. And last, it says the percent bar graph shows the percent of each genre of movie that is in Kevin's media library. Summarize and describe the data distribution. So again, when we're summarizing data, we're just saying what we see. So here, from the percent bar graph, I can see that action is over 40, maybe even close to 50%. Comedy looks like from 50 to maybe 70, so 20%. Drama, maybe 10%. And thriller looks like 20%. So from this, I can tell that action would be the genre that takes up the most space in his media library. So action would be our mode. So our summary could say action movies take up almost half of the data, so action movies would be the mode. All right, if y'all have any questions about these notes, Make sure you're coming to tutorials to ask questions, and I will see you later. Y'all have a great day.